Welcome to our fifth video in our PHP and MySQL series. Previously we looked at inserting records into the database. As you can see here, we managed to insert these particular records into our table called students. So the next task, as indicated, we are supposed to retrieve this particular data from our database as indicated here and produce it in form of a report. So how do we do it? We shall create a new PHP page which we shall call students report. So you go to new, that is, you go to the file menu, then new. So we shall save it as, so you go to file, then save as. So this is the folder where we are having all our pages, so we shall call it students report .php. So we save. So we shall have our HTML tag right here. Then we shall give it a title, meaning what appears on the tab when that particular page is accessed. So we shall call it students report. Okay. Then we shall now go to the body where we shall have our report displayed. So we can give it heading H1. Remember, we said that with headings we can have heading 1 up to 6, with H1 being the biggest in terms of thickness. Okay, so we shall say Makerere University Business School as our heading right here. So we shall have Makerere University Business School. So we need to style this particular heading so that it's able to look good. So we shall use the inline styling where we shall say style. Remember, we said that when you're doing inline styling, you do it from the opening tag. So we shall type style, then we give it some property. You can say the background will have the linear gradient. So we want it to have more than one color, with one color dissolving into the other. That's what we call the linear gradient. So the variation in the gradient will depend on which value you give the x, y coordinates of your arrangement. So our linear gradient will contain blue and yellow color. So those are the two colors in the xy coordinates in terms of our gradient. Then, as usual, we don't forget to put the semicolon. Then our text color, we shall say white. Okay, that will be the text color of our heading. So before we go any further, we can first cross-check with how our heading will look. So I'm going to copy this to another tab, then I change this to students report.php. So the linear gradient is this. You can use any color of your choice. We have chosen blue and yellow. So we need to center line this. So how do we do that? we shall go to the opening tag right here, then type center, then you terminate it from here at the end, then you save the changes. So when we refresh here, it should be able to center align our heading. Good. So you can align to the center. So let's proceed and produce our report. So how shall we present our report? We shall present it in the table format. We shall present our report in the table format. Then we shall see how the display will be. So when we go and refresh here, it should be able to align to the center. There was an issue with the spelling of center. Yeah. So now to separate our heading from the content or the report that we shall have, we shall use what we call horizontal rule. This particular element helps us to produce some horizontal line. So when we refresh here, we shall have these horizontal lines. I want our report to appear somewhere below here. Okay. So let us get started. We say that we shall represent our report in the table format. So we can say table. Then we can as well centerline it immediately. So we can say center. Then we close the tag here for the center. Okay. So now we have our table tag here. Remember we said that table is made up of rows and columns. So we are going to put the first row with the element tr, meaning table row. And inside this row we shall have the headings, just like the way we see our table right here. We have this column heading where we have reg number, student name, program, gender, and calendar right here. So this is what we call the table headings. So the HTML element for table headings is th. So therefore we shall go ahead and do that. So we shall have the first table heading, which will contain our first column of the report, where we shall have registration number. So we shall have registration number. So you can as well copy this and you rename. So the next table heading will have our student name. Then the next table heading, that is th, not table data, will have the program that the student is doing. Then the next table heading will have the gender. Then the next table heading will have the date of birth. So you can say date of birth. So when you go and check right here and refresh, you should be able to have our table headings here. as you can see. Okay, so this is our table. We have not indicated the border thickness, but you can as well do that in case you want to appreciate it as a table. Here in the opening tag of table, you can say style, then you can say the border, and you make it 1 pixel, and you make it solid. In case you want to give it a color as well, you can do so. You can say blue, and you put the same color. So when you go and refresh, we shall be able to appreciate our table with all those properties in it. So that is our exterior border of our table. So you can decide to transfer the same to the rest of the areas, to the rows, if you want. For example, you can copy the same here and give the same properties to the rows, such that when you refresh, double quotes, so when you refresh, you'll be able to see that. Okay, so that is what we call the table heading. So let's go ahead and now retrieve our records. So we shall write the PHP code right here to be able to retrieve our records from the database. So like we said earlier, you put the PHP opening tag, which is question mark, then PHP, press the enter key, then you close it. Okay, so now we shall be able to write our source code there. So the first thing is for us to connect to the database using the other function that we used previously, require once. So connect.php. So like we said earlier, this will help us to connect to the database. So after connecting to the database, then we also get the registration number. So if I set, so we make sure that we check that this is set, the registration number. What is set? This time we are using the get function because we are retrieving data from the database. Previously we used the post. So get, what are we using as our primary key for referencing or retrieving this? We are using the reg number. So we shall say reg number is what we are using to retrieve that particular record. Okay. So what should happen? We should run a query. Okay. So we shall give it the variable name query. So you type query equals to, then you write the string for that particular query, which is to select all items. So you put it in double quotes and say select all. Select all. Now all is represented using the asterisk, meaning select all records that are in the database. That is called students. So select all records from students. So that is the name of our database, as you can rather of our table. Here our table is called students. So if you doubt the spelling, you can as well copy, then you just paste it here. Okay. So we select everything from the database, After selecting, we produce some results. So we are going to give the variable name results, okay, equals to MySQL query So just like we did previously, we shall do the connection to the database, connect, and after connecting, use this particular string to retrieve the records from the database. Okay, so this is the query that helps us to fetch all records from our database. But how do we do that? We have to first connect to the database. After connecting, we use this particular query to fetch that record from the database. Okay, so we are connecting and applying this particular query. Okay, so after doing that, we shall run a while loop, okay, where we shall say that while there are still some records, while we still have some records in the row, what should happen? Okay, we should fetch those records, that is MySQL I fetch associated values, okay, meaning values associated with this particular query that we are trying to prompt the database to run. Okay, so that's why we're using this MySQL fetch associated values, meaning values associated with our variable called results. Okay, so if we have already set our registration number, select all values from this table called students. After making this connection, then while we still have some values in our table, okay, we still have some rows, fetch values associated with this particular query. That's why we have MySQL fetch associated values to this particular query that you're running right here. Okay, so what should happen when we fetch these values? Finally, this is now fetching. What should happen? We should be able to display these values on our table. Okay, so as you can see now, we are not yet having any records displayed. We have successfully connected to the database, but we have not yet retrieved or displayed any records. So this message, successfully connected to database, is coming from our connect query that we wrote earlier. You can as well remove it, but for learning purposes, we are having it there. Okay, so that's why you see this particular message displayed here, right there, successfully connected to the database. Okay, so now that we have retrieved this particular information, now that we have retrieved the information, we need to display. So we are going to write the source code here for displaying that while there are still values existing in our table, we should keep retrieving them. Okay, so how shall we do that? We shall use the echo function. So we say echo. What are we echoing? We are echoing the table row. Table row. Then normally, to make sure that you don't forget, make sure that you close it immediately. Okay, so we shall close this table row before you are able to forget. Okay, so table row. So This is the closing tag in HTML. Okay, so because we are writing the HTML code within the PHP syntax, as you can see here, that's why we are putting this particular row, meaning the second row, we are putting it in double quotes, as opposed to this one which you are writing outside the PHP syntax, which is table row, table row. So this is our second row that we are creating. So in between the row, we shall return some data. Okay, and the data that we shall return is what you're seeing right here. I want to return these records just the way you see it here. So these are table headings, which is an equivalent of what you're seeing right here. These are our table headings. Okay, then this that you're seeing right here, this particular record, is what we call table data. So that is TD. So meaning we shall use the HTML element TD to be able to display those records right there. Okay, so how shall we do that? So in between this particular row, we have the data that we shall be returning. So you echo. What are we echoing here? We are echoing the table data. Don't forget to enclose in angular brackets. So that is table data. Which result will it fetch? It is what you're seeing right there. To return what we have picked from the row right here. So you put the period or a dot, then you type row. Okay, so what are we retrieving first? We are retrieving the reg number. So you put it in double quotes, rather single quotes. So you can say reg number, which is right here. Okay, so after doing that, we close that particular cell, still in quotes, double quotes. So you open and say TD. Remember the closing tag, you need to use the / to be able to close it. Okay, so that is the same thing that we shall do for the rest of the remaining cells or the data that you are retrieving. So far, we're only going to display the registration number as per what we have so far written. Okay, so we can as well go ahead and check this out before we proceed. So when I refresh, be able to display. So let's copy and paste for the remaining parts of our table. So we shall copy this and paste. Then we only rename this. So to make sure that we are somehow on point, I'll just check this, that is student name. So we shall type there student name. So this is student name. And we shall paste again. So let's align them together like that. Then this will be program. So paste this. Next is gender. paste that, then we'll rename calendar. Okay, as long as we have not lost the spelling of anything here, we should be able to display those records. Okay, so we can do some small verification. Okay, so we checked right here to make sure that all values are set to the get function, then selected all records from the table called students, and use this MySQL query to connect to our database. And using this particular query string, we are able to select the records. Then we also say that while there are still some records on our database, that is on our table, just like we see here, we should be able to fetch them. We should fetch associated values to our results query here, which is helping us to fetch. Then we return them, or what we call echo. So when we go and refresh, you'll be able to see our report right here. Okay, so this is how you retrieve the records from the database. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next video.